Dhyana Yoga. See, the mind has 4 levels. You can be on the surface, or you can go deep down into your own center, core. And as you start going down into your center, you will find a resolution comes, answers come to all the problems, and unitive understanding comes, an understanding which can unite, which integrates. It's just like a circle, the circumference and the center. When you come to the surface mind, then you will have first of all chinta and vilapa. Vilapa means regret about the past. Chinta means anxiety about the future, worry, anxiety. So this regret and anxiety, when they start playing on your mind, you say you have come to the absolutely superficial and the most outer layer of your mind. Then you can go one step below, and that is called vichara. Vichara means specific, directed, logical thinking. Vishesha chara. Vishesha means specific. Chara means to move, to walk in a specific way. Your thinking moves in a specific, organized way. You say that is vichara. That is better than chinta and vilapa. But vichara can clash with another vichara. You can have an argument, you can have a discussion, or you can have a debate with another vichara. So vichara, though it is superior to chinta and vilapa, is still not the highest state of mind. And then below the vichara is the dhyana. Dhyana is contemplation. When you get absorbed in an idea, supposing you are sitting for meditation and you are thinking about God, or you are thinking about love, or you are thinking about peace, or you are thinking about some very good value, harmony, beauty, such thoughts. And that makes you get so deeply absorbed that you begin to experience it and you get completely absorbed in it. So that is called dhyana, that is contemplation. So this is what is praised by the yogis. For the yogi, he is most interested in experiencing the state of dhyana, state of contemplation. You cannot have spiritual progress without dhyana. Action, ritual, intellectual understanding, these are various levels, but none of them can bring you that union which is possible only through dhyana, through contemplation, through meditation. Meditation will unite you with the object of your meditation. What is the object of meditation? It can be God, it can be the self, it can be the I, that who am I? When I become the subject, then I'm watching my own thinking process, I'm watching my thoughts, and thoughts belong to my other nature, and the witnessing I, that is belonging to my spiritual nature. So by meditation, by dhyana, I can get absorbed in this being, the sense of self. And when you come to the sense of self, then you have no more superficial disturbances. You are at peace, you are at oneness, you are attuned. So this is the greatest thing. Now what is the distraction in this process? Well, the mind is a distraction. The mind itself which can create thoughts, and the thoughts which can lead you astray. Just like a boat which is blown away in the waters, the mind can draw you away. And why does the mind draw you away? Because there is desire, or there is attachment, or there is egoism. Any of these things, they will distract the mind. And so dhyana always is practiced with the self-control, the control of the mind. The thinking is directed, focused. Just like the rays of the sun are focused with a magnifying glass, or just like the laser beam in which all the light waves have the same wavelength and therefore they become concentrated in one beam, one streak. Similarly, the thoughts also become concentrated, one-pointed, and that becomes a very powerful tool for a person to penetrate and gain insight into anything that you want to gain insight into, specifically human nature. The interest of a spiritual person is to know his own nature, and by knowing his own nature, he begins to know the nature all around. By knowing yourself, you understand everything else. As long as you don't know yourself, you will have that much of not understanding of the world too. Now in the scheme of the Gita, this chapter is the first chapter that is leading us into another section of the Gita, and that is the section where more abstract and more philosophical values are discussed. First we are talking about discipline, yoga, sankhya, karma, knowledge and karma sannyasa. Now we are entering into a more mystical part of the Gita, where a person is withdrawing into oneself to discover the hidden splendor. When you talk of soul, the soul is like our hidden splendor. It is like a bird in the cage. It's like a treasure which we should discover, which we have to uncover, and that must be experienced. Now we have, as we said, karma of the yogis and renunciation of the sannyasis. The two groups of people who have spiritual inclination, one group is called the yogis, and yogis are action oriented, and the other group is sannyasis. Sannyasis are not action oriented, they are knowledge oriented. These were two streams that were running parallel, and in the Gita what has happened is these two streams are reunited. Whichever path you take, the goal is the same. Whether you go through the path of karma yoga or whether you take the path of sannyasa, ultimately you reach the same goal. You will have the same final unitive experience. So the chapter begins with Krishna. Anashritaha karma phalam karyam karma karoti yaha sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na niragnir na cha akriyaha. The householder's duty was to maintain the sacrificial fire. And when the person became a sannyasi, the first thing the person did was he stopped performing the fire sacrifice and stopped doing actions also, akriyas. So who is a sannyasi? Just by giving up the sacrificial fire or just by ceasing from work, a person does not become a sannyasi. Only when that person is not attached to the fruit of karma. Anashritaha karma phalam karyam karma karoti. According to the bounden duty or necessary action, if one does necessary actions, those actions which should be performed, karya karma, and having no hankering after the fruit of that action, only such a person can be considered as a true sannyasi. So in this verse, karma yoga and sannyasa are united, because the karma yogi is the person who performs actions, and the sannyasi is the person who has no more desire, no more need for anything. He does not want anything outside himself to feel fulfilled, does not need something from outside to be happy. So these two ideas are fused. But the sannyasi had a danger of going into a vacuum because no action. So you can become very inactive person. So that inaction is corrected by saying you should perform necessary actions. Because even to maintain the body, a person has to act. Even to get your food, to have basic needs, for that action is necessary. So nobody can give up action completely. Person should be active. But only the desire for benefit, the desire that profit must come out of this action all the time, that attitude must change. Instead, the person should only perform necessary action and the result will come on its own. We should not be worried about the result. If a person can have that mental attitude, then that person can be considered as a sannyasi. The second verse says, Yam sannyasam iti prahur yogam tam vidhi pandava nahi asanyasta sankalpo yogi bhavati kaschana. That which people call renunciation, note that to be yoga. So here again you say that renunciation and yoga both are the same. There is no difference. You are uniting those two concepts. O Pandava, one who has not given up his willful desires for particularized ends never indeed becomes a yogi. So when you say sankalpa, that is a personal intention for particular desired effects. People have sankalpas. They have a very personal intention for particular desired object, for a particular thing. That sankalpa is a psychological factor, and that must also be given up if a person wants to become a yogi. A yogi does not depend on any kind of willful scheming. Yogi accepts things, the bounty. What comes naturally, by chance. What comes by grace. Not that which is coming by willfully intentioned, planned, schemed actions. So if that scheming, planning, sankalpa is there, then person cannot be a yogi. Arurukshor muner yogam karma karanam uchyate yoga arudhasya tasyaiva samaha karanam uchyate. Yoga of a man of self-control who is still an aspirant for it is said to have action as its motive principle. Supposing a person is cycling up a hill, he has to use considerable force on the pedal to push himself up the hill. But once he has reached the top, then he can just roll down. He need not perform any special activity. He just has to maintain his balance, his poise. Similarly for a yogi too, when he is trying to become a yogi, he has to put in a lot of effort. But once he has attained that yoga, then he needs only to be tranquil. He needs only to be balanced. He needs only to keep his poise. That is all. Number 4. Yada hi indriyartheshu na karmassu anusajjate sarva sankalpa sannyasi yoga arudhas tada uchyate. In the Gita there are many models of what a realized person is like. One is the bhakta, the other is the gunatita, one is the sthita prajna. Here we have one more, the yoga rudha, the person who has ascended to yoga. That's called a yoga rudha. When, however, neither in the objects of the senses nor in action one finds attachment, such a man who has renounced all willful desires for particularized ends, sarva sankalpa sannyasi, is said to be one who has ascended to yoga. So the yogi has no attachment to any object or to action. Then you are working with a sense of freedom. You have inner state of freedom, not bound by any object or any activity. Your actions have spontaneity in it, freedom in it. No object should be attractive and no activity should be of interest. Yet how can you perform? You perform because you have the wisdom to know that this is the proper thing to be done. Your actions are coming from a deep understanding, and that is what makes the yogic actions so beneficial, so pure and so thoughtful. Uddhared atmana atmanam na atmanam avasadayet atmaiva hi atmano bandhur atmaiva ripur atmanah. See, uddhared means to raise oneself. Uddhared atmana atmanam. By our own self we should raise ourselves. Our own self should not become the enemy of ourself. If there is a conflict in a person's mind, then that person becomes one's own enemy. So everybody is trying to help you. Circumstances are beneficial. You have good fortune. But if you have a conflict in your mind, if a person's mind hasn't become befriended, then that person will find that his own self is standing as an enemy. In the Buddhist tradition also, in the Dhammapada, the Buddha says, better than all your relatives, better than all your friends is your mind. Your mind that is tamed, a mind that is disciplined, it will help you. And a mind that is not trained, not disciplined, it will always stand in front of you as if an enemy, pulling you down. This lower self, the lower mind, lower nature, this should always be uplifted by the self. Uddhared atmana atmanam na atmanam avasadayet. Don't hurt yourself. Do not punish yourself. Don't put yourself down. Always try to raise yourself by the self. Number 6. Bandhur atma anatmanastasya yena atmaiva atmana jitah anatmanastu shatrutve varteta atmaiva shatruvat. The self is dear to one possessed of self, by whom even the self by the self has been won. For one not possessed of self, the self would be in conflict with the very self, as if an enemy. That's just how it works. Bandhu means a dear friend. Self is dear to one possessed of self. Those who are leading disciplined lives, whose minds are under control, who have good value system, their mind is always like their best friend. And those who do not have any discipline and who are prey to desires, their own mind becomes like an enemy. Conflict comes. Jitatmanah prashantasya paramatma samahitah shitoshna sukha dukkheshu tatha manapamanayoho. To one of conquered self who rests in peace, the Supreme is in a state of neutral balance in heat, cold, happiness, suffering, honor, disgrace. These are the experiences in life, always opposites. There is cold and heat, that is the physical level. And happiness, suffering, this is the mental level. And honor, disgrace, this is the social level. In society we can experience honor or disgrace. In our mind we can experience happiness or suffering. And in our physical body we experience heat or cold. And in all these different opposing states, if we can be balanced, maintain a neutrality, then we say that we are of conquered self. The person who has conquered the self, person who has transcended the self, these are his signs, lakshana. Such a person is even balanced. Whether people are garlanding him and praising him, or if people are hurling insults, the person is unaffected. He treats both equally. Or if he is going through some painful experiences or through happy experiences, person treats them both alike. So this is the key to wisdom. That yogi whose self is satisfied by synthetic wisdom and analytic knowledge, established in unchanging immobility, who has gained full control over sense attachments, is said to be unified, one to whom a lump of earth, a stone and gold are the same. Perfection in yoga is clarified in this verse. So such a person is tripta atma. Tripta atma means sufficient unto himself and does not compare himself to others. It is a human tendency, we always compare and try to match yourself. But when you say tripta atma, is satisfied with the self. Such a person is quite an independent person. He is not affected by the circumstances around. And more so that he is able to see a unity. Samaloshta ashma kanchana, that is lump of earth, stone and gold are the same. Who has transcended the worldly value system and who can look at the stone, a lump of gold and a lump of earth is the same. So such a person is of an advanced level of consciousness. He is not a socialized individual. Moreover, he can see the same as between dear well-wishers, friends, enemies, those indifferent, those in between, haters, relations, and also as between good people and sinners who can maintain an equal attitude. So such a person is not socialized. In social conditions, we make distinctions between well-wishers and friends, saints and sinners, and good people and bad people, and friends and enemies. But a yogi is not affected by such kind of thoughts. He has an even-mindedness, an equal drishti towards all. He is able to see all human beings with a common eye, without any preference or hatred towards anybody. Number 10 is Yogi Yunjita Satatam Atmanam Rahasi Stitaha Ekaki Yatchitatma Nirashir Aparigraha. The yogi should constantly gather his own self, unitively, established in a place where he can be by himself alone, with relational mind and self under control, without expectations and without possessive intentions. There is a need for yoga to be of unbroken continuity. This is the characteristic of a yogi. That is the dwelling in solitude, being a little alone, not too much with the crowd. So yoga is not the same as organized religion or congregational worship. Normally we see organized religions where people meet together, and also congregational worship where people sing songs and hymns. But a yogi's life is much more different. It's an independent, free life which does not fall into this kind of groupism. He's a law unto himself, an individual, completely free. Yogi does not wait for favorable events to happen. Nirashir, without expectations. You're not hankering after special favorable events to happen, and without possessive intentions. So there's no tension of getting something. There are no pulls or hooks of any sort. You say you're living as a free person. Your relationships are based on good values, not on any expectations or getting something from somebody or waiting for only favorable events to happen. The yogi has an even-mindedness. He is able to maintain his poise. That poise of the yogi is the greatest advantage, which is the result of years of practice, attaining the poise, the even-temperedness. Now we come to a section where the actual practice of meditation is explained. This is number 11. Suchau deshe pratishtapi sthiram asanam atmanah na atyushritam na ati nicham Shailajin Kushottaram. This is a seat that has to be prepared for yoga, that is neither too high nor too low, and covered with cloth, skin and grass. And there, having made the mind one-pointed, and with relational mind and sense functions subdued, duly taking his place on his seat, let him unitively engage in yoga for transparent self-consciousness. As we said, transparent self-consciousness is what we need. Just like a pool of water that becomes muddied because the stream that brings water inside is bringing muddy water. Supposing all that silt is removed, then the water becomes clear, transparent. You can see right to the bottom. And if there are precious stones or beautiful things lying in the bottom, you can see them. Similarly, the mind also has consciousness. And when the sense organs are streaming in the sensations, they can pollute the mind. They can make the mind muddy. Yoga is just the reverse. In yoga, you are purifying the mind. You are purging it of all its conditionings. What is the pollution here? The mind becomes conditioned. Conditioned by objects, conditioned by thoughts, conditioned by likes and dislikes, conditioned by preferences, fears, ambitions. All these become the vrittis or modulations that are affecting the mind. And from those states you want to come to a state of transparency, full self-consciousness. And for that you have to practice meditation, sitting in a place that is not too high or too low, and bringing your mind to the focus point then. Withdrawing from the senses, withdrawing from the outer world for some time, so that no fresh stimulation comes to you. And when that happens, then you can go into the self and subdue the sense functions. After you have subdued the sense functions, you can turn the consciousness onto itself. The consciousness can examine itself. And by that process, it can start knowing itself. You begin to know yourself, the real self, better. Samam kaya shiro grivam dharayan achalam sthiram samprakeshya nasikagram swam dishascha anavalokayan. With body, head, neck evenly held. The spine and the neck and the head, they must be in a straight line. And immovable poise. You should not be rocking or moving around. You should be firm. Looking at one's nose tip, that's a form of concentration. With both the eyes, you look at the nose tip. Not perceiving the actual directions of space. With tranquil self, with fear gone, established in the vow of a brahmachari. Having mind subdued, related to me, through contemplative thought. He may sit united, having me for his supreme goal. So there is an identity to be established. Yoga implies bipolarity. On one side is the aspirant, the yogi, who is trying. On the other side is me, the Lord, God, to whom you are directing your thoughts. You are maintaining that thought for as long as you can without getting distracted. That way you establish a bipolarity. You establish a link. You establish a connection between the subject and object. And here in this case, what is the goal of the yogi? The yogi wants to unite with God. His goal is to reach God. And therefore, he is directing his thoughts towards the Supreme. And with that practice continuously, he establishes a relationship. And then he maintains that relationship. And once he maintains that relationship, then wherever he is, he does not get distracted. If that relationship is not maintained, then when you go out into the world, when you see the objects, you hear words, the mind will get distracted. So that is what is to be prevented. So again and again the mind has to be brought back. Thus, ever unitively joining the self, the yogi whose mind is subdued enters into that peace which abides in me, which has its ultimate phase, total effacement. So you say effacement, nirvanam paramam. Nirvana means a burning out. That is, all the personal karmas is then completely burnt out and the greater self emerges. So you merge into the self. Number 16, to be sure there is no yoga for a glutton, nor for one who fasts, nor, O Arjuna, is it either for one who oversleeps or is over wakeful. The beauty of yoga is it's a wonderful middle path. It's not a path of extremes. It's not a path of too much of suffering and pain, neither is it a path of too much enjoyment. It's a path of hope and happiness, cheerfulness and positive thinking. The yogi's life is a life of moderation, avoiding all kinds of extremes. Number 17. Yukta ahara viharascha, yukta cheshtasya karmasu, yukta sapnava bodhasya, yogo bhavati dukkhaha. Ahara is food, proper food, and vihara. Vihara means recreation. Gentle sport, outing, all these are permissible for a yogi. Who engages in activities in proper moderation, who sleeps and wakes in a well-regulated way, yoga takes its course painlessly. Yada viniyatam chittam atmani eva avatisthate nihaspraha sarva kamebhyo yukta iti uchyate tada. When the subdued relational mind, viniyatam chittam, stays in the self itself, desireless of all desires, then it is said to be united. The unification that is sought after is the mind being established in the self. The mind otherwise, when it is with the indriyas, then it becomes related with the outer world. If you're relating with the outer world, the problem is variety, transition, change, and impermanence. Mind needs something stable, it needs something enduring, it needs something lasting. And that is found only in the self. Only the self abides. The self is indestructible. As we learned in the second chapter itself, the self is neither born nor does it die. It is not created or destroyed. It is everlasting and it is blissful. It is pure by nature. So the mind has to find its unity with the self. When it is established in the self, and desireless of all desires, then once that is accomplished, then there is no desire for anything else. Because to be united with the self, it is a very satisfying experience. After all, any object that we get is nothing but the self being reflected in that object. When a person runs after some desire and fulfills that desire, that sense of fulfillment has come from the self. It does not come from the object. The object is only a reflection. So when you are united with the self, there is no more desire to look for anything outside. As a lamp set in a windless place does not flicker, such a simile is thought of in regard to a yogi who has brought under restraint his relational mind, ever uniting thus in the union of the self. This is the most wonderful simile of the lamp burning in a windless place, without any flicker, without any shake, without any disturbance, constantly burning, shedding its light to all around. That is how the mind of the yogi becomes. When the relational mind is brought under restraint, all the flickering that comes by the forces of the outer world, those cease, and the mind burns steadily as a lamp, ever uniting thus in the union of the self. Verse number 20 to 23 form one sentence, and it gives the characteristics of yoga resulting from discussions in previous chapters. So verse 20 marks the first stage of progress in yoga, change of interest when restraint is applied to outgoing tendencies. Number 20. Yatro aparamate chittam niruddham yoga sevaye yatre chaeva atmana atmanam pashyan atmani tushyati. So that is the whole idea of yoga, a kind of reversing, 180-degree turn. Normally the tendency of the mind is to go outward, the outer world, and that is turned inward. That state where the relational mind attains tranquility, restrained through continued cultivation of a yogic attitude, and where also the self by the self in the self enjoys happiness. Happiness is sought for within the self itself, not from any outward tendency, not by being an activist. By making it contemplative, the outward activism is turned into an inward contemplation. That in which one cognizes the ultimate limit of happiness, which can be grasped by reason and goes beyond the senses, and established wherein there is no more swerving from the true principle. So this is one step further of happiness. Yoga is not a void or a vacuum. It is not an empty feeling, but it is a content of positive happiness. Grasped by reason means that it is a sober contemplation. Reasonableness can function. Yogic state is not like the exaggerated hysterical states you see in some religious functions where people go into hysteria or go into trances. Yoga is not like that. It's not going into any trance or hysteria because it can be grasped by reason. So it's a very sober contemplation. Number 22. Yam labdhva cha param labham manyate cha adhikam tatah yasmin sthito na dukkhena guruna api vichalayet. So there is a high value of absorbing interest, which having obtained there is no other gain thought of which could be greater in value. Yoga, getting the state of self and this unity poise, is the greatest thing a person can achieve in life, greater than anything else that you can hope for in society. Position, power, wealth and others things cannot equal the bliss and the sheer feeling of happiness and goodness, well-being that is experienced when you experience the state of yoga. And once established there is no swerving even by heavy suffering. So it is such a state of positive happiness that suffering cannot affect you. Tam vidya dukkha samyoga viyogam yoga samnitam sa nischayena yogatavyo yogo anirvana chetasaha. This is a definition of yoga here. Dukkha samyoga viyogam. Disaffiliation from the context of suffering. There cannot be any more suffering in the life of a yogi. And that should be known by the name of yoga. Disaffiliation from the context of suffering. Such a yoga should be adhered to with determination, free from spiritual regret. From 24 to 29, we have some subtler aspects of yoga. Yoga has two sides, one positive and the other negative. Abandoning completely all desires, originating in the will for particularized ends, curbing the collection of sense functionings on every side. You see, here rather than describing yoga, it is describing the yogi, the state of mind of the person who is practicing yoga. So you say abandoning completely all desires, originating in the will for particularized end. Sankalpa again comes in here. Sankalpa is that very personalized intentions. The desires that originate there you give up completely. Curbing indeed with the mind the collection of sense interests, indriya gramam, on every side. It's number 25. Slowly activity should be brought to a standstill by reason steadily applied, establishing the mind reflexively in the self, atma samstham, without thinking of anything whatever. The mind loses its distinction as a functional unit. With the result, consciousness becomes free of ideation. See, these are all subtle aspects. The mind functions only when there is idea. If there is no idea, then there is no mind. So when the ideation cease or are curbed, then the distinctions of the mind also cease. Then only pure consciousness remains. And that is a state of highly evolved yoga. As long as the mind stays active, a person is bound to be affected by it. But when there is no mind, then there is no more suffering, there is no more pain, there is no more problems. You are seeing the self everywhere, all the time. Yato nischarati manas chanchalam asthiram tatastato niyamyai etad atmani eva vasham nayet. Whatever causes the changeful, unsteady mind to go out again and again from each side, restraining it again and again, it should ever be led to the side of the self. Mind being associative, it passes from one set of associations to another, depending on the interest. When people are put into solitary confinement and they are not allowed to meet anybody or see anybody, then they go almost insane, because the mind has nothing to associate with. So mind needs association. That is the nature of the mind. It's associative. And it passes from one set of associations to another set of associations based on the interest. So there is underlying interest, and based on the interest, a person will associate. So this interest must change. When the interest is changed to the side of the self, then automatically the associations also drop off. Number 27. Such a yogi, verily of calmed mind, of pacified passion, who has become the absolute, free from all dross, comes to supreme happiness. So here you say outgoing tendencies constitute rajas. The rajas makes the mind go out, and not ordinary kind of joy, but a contemplative kind of joy. When you say supreme happiness, is a contemplative happiness. When you see pictures of or statues of the Buddha, there is a smile on his face. His eyes are closed. There's a beautiful smile on his face. What is that smile? What is that joy coming from? That is a contemplative joy. His eyes are not open. He's not looking outside and feeling joyous. But he is enjoying the joy of one's own self, understanding. The self-knowledge that is coming from his own understanding, and the consciousness that he is experiencing within himself, that is bringing great joy. And that he is sharing with everybody else. So you are not experiencing the outgoing tendencies, but rather what is coming from oneself. So that joy is of a different quality altogether. It's a much more supreme joy. Number 28. Yunjan evam sadatmanam yogi vigata kalmashaha sukhena brahma samsparsham atyantam sukham ashnute. So this is the final peak to which you go. When you say brahma sparshanam, you have contact with the Absolute. Sada yunjan evam atmanam. This is from the psychological end. Same verity viewed from the psychological end. You say you have Brahma Sparshanam. When the mind has contact with the Brahma, that brings the ultimate happiness. There can be nothing greater than that. The experience is the supreme. Just like after you had a sweet, if you sip a cup of coffee or tea, it does not have any sweetness in it because you have tasted something much sweeter. Similarly, Brahma Sparsham. If one person has experienced Brahma Sparshanam, nothing in the world will give that person the same joy. Sarva bhutastam atmanam sarva bhutani cha atmani ikshate yoga yuktatma sarvatra samadarshanaha. One whose self is united by yoga sees the self as abiding in all beings and all beings as abiding in the self, everywhere seeing the same. Cosmology and psychology make no difference to him. State of unity comes where you see all beings united and all beings abiding in the self. The same idea comes in the Isavasya Upanishad also, that he sees the self in all and all in the self. There is no distinction. You are seeing one sense of beauty, one sense of joy, one sense of happiness, one sense of knowledge everywhere. That is uniting everything. Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mai pashyati tasyaham na pranashyami sa cha me na pranashyati. In having had this experience, you say, you are in me, I am in you, I am not lost and he is not lost to me. So you are united, you become completely merged with God, with Absolute. Yoga, having been seen in terms of norms of pure consciousness, passes on in the next two verses to understanding yoga as applicable to an actual person living in a real and natural environment. In the mystical language, we say living according to the will of God. I am living in life united with the Lord. Sarva bhutastam yomam bhajati ekatvam astitaha sarvata vartamano api sa yogi mai vartate. The yogi who honors me as abiding in all beings, established in unity, remaining as he may be in every possible way, he abides in me. No demand from yogi in any pattern of behavior. He should remain affiliated to the Absolute. So the yogi need not follow any specific way. He is always established in the unity with the Lord. So he remains affiliated to Absolute in all circumstances, in all ways, in all patterns of behavior. By establishing an analogy with the self, he who sees equality everywhere, O Arjuna, whether in pleasant or painful situations, he is considered a perfect yogi. He is not a person who will grumble when things are unpleasant or feel joyous when things are pleasant. In whatever situations you have the same sense of equality. That is a perfect yogi. Now Arjuna's doubts begin. All are brothers in the self. When you have a sense of self, then you say all are brothers, all are equal in the self. I think in this respect, Islam has managed it to quite an extent. The leader, the president and the commoner, they all stand together in the same line, in the same level and pray together to God. In that level, they are all brothers. But here, brothers in the self, not brothers in a relative sense, but brothers in the spirit, in the self. So similarly, a yogi too has that ability to see brothers in the spirit, in the self. Arjuna vacha yo yam yogas tvayi proktaha samyena madhusudana etasyam na pashyami chanchalatvad titam thiram. He says that yoga you have outlined consisting of sameness, O Madhusudana. I do not see for this any stable foundation owing to changefulness. The mind is changeful indeed, O Krishna. Chanchalam. It is agitated, forceful and imperative in character. Like the wind, I consider its control difficult. He has his doubts. He says, I cannot believe in this sort of a yoga because the mind is so changeful. Krishna's way of yoga is looked upon as open, where backsliding is no danger. Associations based on momentary interest carry away understanding. That's the whole thing about yoga. You can practice it, but in a moment when some associative interest comes, the mind can get deviated, distracted. So this is what Arjuna is afraid about. So again, as we said, the peripheral aspect of consciousness, where control is very difficult, where voices are heard, figures are seen, touches are felt. These are the peripheral aspect of consciousness. And here the analogy is of the wind. Wind has no centralizing, it is just everywhere, whereas yoga consists of centralizing. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Mano Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Kaunteya Vairagyena cha Grihyate. So it is hard, but through Vairagya and Abhyasa. Abhyasa means practice, and Vairagya means dispassion, not having any raga. These are the two methods by which the mind can be controlled. Number 36, by a self uncontrolled. Yoga is hard to attain, such is my opinion. But by a self which is its own support, endeavoring, it is possible to reach through the means indicated. So Arjuna Vacha. Arjuna said, he who is unsubdued but endowed with faith, whose mind has deviated from yoga, not reaching to yogic attainments, what path does he take, O Krishna? Is he not fallen from both like a riven cloud, destroyed without a mainstay, O mighty armed, confounded regarding the path of the Absolute? This is a very pertinent doubt, that supposing we practice yoga and we don't attain the goal, what happens then? Do you fall completely? This is where hope is given. Even a person who has not attained will be born in the house of the righteous and the good, and his previous tendencies will force him to continue forward, and he will attain his goal. Krishna says, here nor hereafter is there destruction for him, for none of good deeds, O son, ever goes to perdition. Anybody doing kalyanakrit, doing good deeds, will never go to perdition, will never suffer, will never go into a durgati, bad times. Prapya punya kritam lokan ushitva shashvati samaha. The highest world that karma yoga can bring is punya kritam loka. So by doing the good works, you will go to the punya kritam loka. Having attained to the world of the righteous and having dwelt there for eternal years, he who deviated from the path of yoga is reborn in a house of the pure and well-to-do. And there he obtains that union with reason pertaining to a previous body and strives thence again for perfection. Or else he is born in the family of wise yogis only. A birth like this is very rare to obtain in this world. So people say Purva Janama Vasana. When they discover somebody has made a radical change in his life, how did this happen? They say it was Purva Janama Vasana. He had done this Kriya in the previous life and he is continuing. It was unfinished, and in this life he is finishing it from wherever he left off. By former practice itself he is drawn on, though disabled, as one merely desiring to know of yoga transcends the absolute of sound. When he says Shabda Brahma is referring to the Vedas. And when you say you go beyond Shabda Brahma, it means you go to the real absolute, which is beyond sound, which is beyond word. But the yogi who strives with perseverance, purified from evils and perfected by many births, then reaches the supreme path. So life itself has this process of evolution. When we talk of evolution, it's not the Darwinian sense of evolution, but an evolution of consciousness, that in each lifetime we are perfecting ourselves, we are making ourselves more purified, more adept, more better to reach the supreme goal. The yogi is greater than men of austerity. He is thought of to be greater than men of wisdom and greater than men of works. Therefore become a yogi, O Arjuna. See, yoga is a way of thinking and a way of life, and it is superior to men of austerity. Austerity is full of hardships and harsh exclusiveness, and greater than men of wisdom, the jnani. The jnanis can become very dry, having only discussions and arguments, and greater than men of works, the ritualistic karmis, they can become very egoistic. So all these forms have their drawbacks, the karmis, the jnanis, but the yogi is able to overcome all this because of his unitive affiliation to the Absolute, because of the value of joy in life, the ananda, the bliss, and therefore he is considered superior to the tapasi and the jnani and the karmi. Of all yogis, he who with inner self is merged in me, full of faith, devoted to me, is considered by me the most unitive. Yogic life is not full of harsh austerities, but full of joy, hope, and free from conflict. This is the note at which this chapter ends. The highest values envisioned, personal values left behind. The highest value is innermost self is merged in me, full of faith, devoted to me, is considered by me the most unitive. So you leave behind personal values and instead bring in the values of the Supreme. With this chapter we go into the more subtle aspect.